Hi guys, welcome. If you're new to my channel, my name is Carmen. Welcome. So as you might already know, in numerology, all numbers have positive aspects, but they also have negative aspects too. And in a lot of my videos, I talk about the positive aspects of each number, but I've only briefly talked about the negative aspects of each number. So we're going to talk about that today. What is the dark side of each number in numerology? Let's find out. But before we get into that, if you are excited to watch this video today, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And if you want to book a reading with me, I will leave a link below to my services. And also, if you want to know how to calculate your life path number and the rest of your numerology chart correctly, you can check out my video on how to calculate these numbers correctly. I will leave a link to that video below so you can check that out later if you like. So I'm putting the timestamps below for each number, so you can just go ahead and skip to the number that you want. So here we have number 6. So all numbers in numerology are ruled by a part of our solar system. 6 is ruled by the planet Venus. And so I want you to imagine that each number is on a spectrum. So on the very far end of the spectrum, we have all of the positive qualities and characteristics of the number. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have all of the negative qualities and characteristics of a number. And most people tend to fall somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, where they have some of the qualities on the positive side of the number, and they also have some qualities on the negative side of the number. So let's talk about the positive side of the number 6 first. So on the positive side of this number, you have a number that is very, very attractive and very, very beautiful. This number really knows how to appreciate beauty and really knows how to make things beautiful in its life. So this number tends to have a very beautiful environment around them. The homes of people with this number tend to be very beautiful. These people also tend to be very attractive physically. All numbers are beautiful and they all are physically attractive, but 6s tend to be in general very, very attractive. So it's rare to meet somebody with this number who is not physically attractive or someone that most people would not consider to be physically attractive. So they tend to be very physically attractive and they understand beauty on a different level. So they dress very beautifully. Their homes are very beautiful. This is also a very peaceful number and a very balanced number. So the even numbers in numerology all tend to be very balanced. And 6 is a very balanced number, meaning that this number has a lot of balance in all areas of its life. So it's balanced at work, balanced in the home, balanced with relationships, just balanced in all areas of its life. Also, a positive 6 will have all of these areas going for them in life. So they'll have a purpose and something that they're doing with their time. They'll have a home, they'll have a family, they'll have relationships with other people. So having all of these things also makes them balanced as well. Also on the positive side of this number, you have a very loving number and a very caring number. So this number is the caretaker number. People that have this number tend to be caretakers and they want to take care of other people. And service to other people is very, very important to them. So taking care of other people and providing service to other people is something that you will see very, very often with this number. And a lot of people with this number tend to go into caretaking professions, such as becoming nurses or becoming teachers or becoming doctors. People that take care of other people. They also want to take care of the community as well. So you'll see that this number often is a community service provider. So a lot of people with this number will be involved in charity works and philanthropy. They really want to serve the community. And service is very important to them because this is a caretaking number. And I wanted to point out that number 3 is very, very similar to number 6. As we know, 3 is a multiple of 6, And a lot of the qualities that you see in the number 3, you're going to see those qualities also in the number 6, but those qualities are going to be amplified in the number 6. So as with the number 3, we saw that the number 3 likes to provide service to people also, but the 3 provides service to people through entertaining them, through their creative projects, through creating things. So they will create something, they will create music, they will create art, they will create something, and in that way the 3 is providing a service to people. So both of these numbers want to provide service to other people and they want to serve other people, but the main difference is that with the 3 is providing the service to people through their creations, through their acts of creation, and the 6 is providing service to people through their helpfulness and through their actions. So these are both service providing numbers. 6 is also very similar to number 3 in the fact that it also likes to create things as well. The only difference is the 6 likes to create things in the domestic area. So 6s like to create families, and they like to create homes, and they like to create domestic, beautiful domestic environments. The 3 will create things that are more self-expressive, such as art, and the 6 will create things that are more domestic. So they create families. 6s like to create children also. 3s also like to create children as well, but 6s like to create children, and they also like to create whole entire families and family environments. They like to create communities. They like to create domestic environments. So 6 is a very domestic number. We see that the home is very, very important to number 6 on the positive side. They tend to have beautiful homes that are well taken care of, and the home is very, very important to them. And creating a very balanced, harmonious, domestic environment is very, very important to them. And they're really, really good at doing that. And for this reason, they tend to get married at young ages. They tend to start having children at younger ages because having a family and a home is very important to them. And if you look at the way the number 6 looks, it kind of looks like a pregnant woman. So the little bump on the 6 kind of looks like the belly of a pregnant woman. Another good thing about this number, like I said, they are caretakers, so they are very devoted to people and serving people. And so they are also very compassionate. They have a lot of compassion for other people because providing service to other people is so important to them. They tend to have a lot of compassion for other people, and they can be very loving and they can be very caring, very concerned about other people and very concerned about their feelings and very helpful to other people. And so as you can see, this number is not only very beautiful on the outside, it is very beautiful on the inside. So we have external and internal beauty. And harmony is very important to them. They want to have harmony in their families, they want to have harmony in their communities, they want to have harmony at work. And so harmony is very important to them, and they're really good at creating harmony. Also, on the positive side of this number, you have a person who is very, very loving and giving in a relationship with another person. And their partners will see this. They will feel the love coming out of this number. They will feel like they are cared about, that this person really, really loves them. This number is really, really good at expressing love to other people, and it's really good at creating this environment where everybody feels loved and everybody feels taken care of. You know, I always like to think of the 6 as like the mom who brings you chicken noodle soup when you're sick. And it's that kind of person that really cares about you and wants to meet your needs and sees that if you need something, they will be there to bring it to you and to take care of you. And so now let's talk about the negative side of this number. And before we do that, I just wanted to mention that I'm not saying that all number 6s have these negative qualities. Okay, I'm definitely not saying that. These are just the most negative attributes of this number. So if you have this number, I'm not saying that you have any of these qualities. Like I said, most people tend to have a few of the positive qualities and a few of the negative qualities. So, okay, so on the negative side of the number, we have a person who is very superficial. And because 6 is the number of beauty and really is a physically attractive number and really likes things to be physically attractive, they like their environments to be physically attractive, they're focused on the attractive element of things, sometimes they can be very superficial and just focused on surface level aspects of life. focused on how things look and what the physical appearance of something is. So in that regard, they can be very superficial. Another negative element of this number is jealousy and possession. So they can be very possessive of their partners. So when there is somebody in their life that they are with, they really like to feel like they own that person and that person belongs to them. And so they can be very possessive, and they can also get jealous as well if they're on the negative side of the number, because they care a lot about the person that they're with and they're very devoted to that person, and they can be very possessive. They can also get very jealous very easily. So they can become jealous of other relationships that this person might have with other people, family members, friends. Jealousy is something that you will see sometimes with this number. Another negative aspect can be unwillingness to change. It's not always the most flexible number, so there can be this unwillingness to change with them. They can also be very intolerant. So they have an idea in their mind of the way they want things to be, and they have an idea in their mind of what they consider to be good and what they consider to be bad. And if something is what they would consider to be bad, if it's something that they do not consider to be good or beautiful, it is not always the most tolerant number. They can also be a little domineering and dominating. They are caretakers. They like to take care of other people, because there's this element of possessiveness where they kind of feel like that person that they care so much about, like they own them. So in some ways they can be dominating. So like a person who's very involved with their friends and very involved with their children, and really has this sense that they have to be the one to help them. They have to be the one to take care of them. You know, it can get to the point sometimes where they are kind of meddling in their life. They see this as an act of helpfulness, that they're helping this person. But to the other person, it might seem like they're being meddlesome or pushy or trying to take over if the help is not wanted. Sixes also tend to have very, very high standards, meaning that they have set the bar very, very high. They have great expectations of people. They have an idea in their mind of the way they want people to be and the way they want people to behave. They have an idea in their mind of the way they want their home to be and their family to be, and they want it to be the best. They have very, very high standards sometimes if they're on the negative side of this number. And sometimes it can be very hard for other people to live up to these great expectations and for other people to live up to these very high standards. It can affect this number to the point where this number doesn't want something, or doesn't want someone in their life, or doesn't want, a home or a career unless it meets their very, very high standards. If it's not meeting their very, very high standards, they might reject it or they might lose interest in it. So like not purchasing a home or dating another person unless they meet their very, very high standards and their great expectations for what they consider to be a great home or a great partner. So on the negative end of this number, you have a perfectionist who wants things to be perfect, and this perfectionism also applies to themselves as well. So they have really high standards for other people, but they also have really high standards for themselves. And if they're on the negative end of the number, they will criticize other people if they're not meeting these perfectionistic high standards. But they will also criticize themselves, and they will have this inner dialogue going on in their head about how they're not doing it perfectly and how they can do it better. Another negative aspect of this number is self-righteousness. So this idea that they know best and that they know better and that they can do it better, and other people just don't have this much knowledge as them, and other people aren't doing it as well as them. Or like kind of feeling that they're morally superior or morally know better than other people. This can seem very self-righteous and can come off as being very self-righteous to other people. And so the main thing that I see with the negative side of this number, people that tend to be on the more negative end, is idealization. So sixes, when they really like somebody and they really love somebody, they will tend to idealize them. And they will make them out to be like a god in their mind, and they will put them on a pedestal, and they will make them out to be like this ideal person. Or it could be like a situation as well, like a job or a situation in their life. They will idealize it and turn it into something that's ideal in their mind and put it on a pedestal. And the problem is that People are not perfect. Jobs and situations in life are not perfect. And so when these people and these jobs or these situations do not meet this ideal vision that they have in their mind that they've created, these great high standards and these great expectations that they have created in their mind, and the reality sets in that this person is only human and is not this larger than life person that they have turned them into in their mind. When that reality starts to set in and the rose-colored glasses come off, it will feel to them like this person has been lying to them this whole time and has deceived them into thinking that there's something that they're not. But the truth is, the 6 really just set them up for failure to begin with, because nobody can ever meet those great standards, those high standards and great expectations that they have put on them, because people are only human. So they were set up for failure. But the 6 won't see it that way. The 6 will feel like, oh, this person has deceived me. They're not as great as I thought they were. And if this happens, they will feel like they are the only capable one in the relationship. They are the only good one in the relationship. Moving on to number 7. So all numbers in numerology are ruled by part of our solar system, and number 7 is ruled by the planet Neptune. So I want you to imagine that all numbers are on a spectrum, and on one end of the spectrum you have all of the positive characteristics of that number, and on the very far other end of the spectrum of that number you have all of the negative aspects of that number. And so most people tend to fall in the middle on the spectrum, having some of the qualities on the positive side and having some of the qualities on the negative side. So let's talk about the positive qualities of the number 7 first. So the first thing is that 7 is a very intellectual number. So this number is very intellectual and very wise. It has a lot of knowledge. So this number can use its brain and its thinking on a level that all the other numbers are not able to do so. People with this number can become scientists, they can become researchers, they can become all kinds of things that require mental abilities and require a greater intellectual level. So they have that great intellectual ability, and they're also very wise. This number tends to be in its head a lot of the time, thinking about things and going over things in its mind. It's a very deep thinking number. It will not be satisfied with just a simple explanation. It wants to analyze things on a deeper level and try to understand things for why exactly they are happening. And so they are very analytical also. They have really good reasoning skills, and they can analyze things, and they can see all of the dimensions and all of the sides of things. They can see the good and they can see the bad in everything because they have very sharp analytical skills. And because of these great analytical skills, they also make really good psychologists. And they can really analyze people and diagnose people and to help people figure out why exactly they're doing what they're doing. So they're very analytical, really good reasoning skills. They're not happy with just a surface answer. They want to know the real reason why something is happening, and they will go deep within their mind to pull out that answer. And because of this, they are visionaries. They can visualize things that other people cannot see. They have great imaginations, and they can imagine things that other people cannot foresee. So a lot of visionaries throughout our time tend to be this number. People that were able to visualize things that didn't even exist. They were able to visualize these things with great imagination skills and bring them into fruition because of their imaginations and their visionary minds. So like a great example of this would be Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a life path number 7, and he was able to visualize a car that didn't exist, a computerized car that was unlike any other car at the time. He was able to visualize this car and bring it into fruition, almost as if he was seeing into the future of what cars would be like in the future. He had those visionary skills and also the skills to be able to do all the research and science behind the car in order to make it happen and in order to bring it into fruition. This number also tends to be very open-minded. So this number, they can think outside of the box, kind of like the number 1 and also the number 5. So number 1, 5, and 7 have this in common, this great ability to think outside of the box and to not accept what is given to us, and to not accept what society considers to be the standard. They can think outside of the box unlike other people can, and they can see the future in many ways because of this. And they can see things that other people cannot see. So they are very, very open-minded people. And because of this, they are open to other ideas, and they are open to new suggestions. And they're very rational people, and they can see that all things in the universe are possible, and all things that other people say are also possible. And so this makes them very open-minded. And as I had mentioned before, a lot of times people with this number can see into the future, and they are visionaries, and this is a very psychic ability that they have. So this number tends to be very psychic on many levels. Sometimes in some situations can read other people's thoughts, can read other people's minds. That's very common with this number. And so also somebody who is on the positive end of this number is a very spiritual person. They have found something that is greater than themselves and greater than, their beliefs, and something to believe in. And so it can be a very spiritual number on many, many levels. And that's another common thing for people with this number to be as well. Spiritual leaders and spiritual teachers, or people that are religious in the religious fields like priests. There's a very spiritual aspect to this number because this number is really good at introspection, and it's really good at going within and tuning out the outside world and just focusing on what is happening inside of them and what is happening in their world. And they can connect to spirit. They can connect to God. Because of this, they have this ability to connect to the spiritual world and to connect to God because they have this great ability to go within. And on the positive end of the number, a lot of sevens are really into meditation. They are very introspective. This is a very introspective number. So because of its great ability to use its mind and go within and kind of tune out the rest of the world, this number tends to be on the academic, intellectual side or on the spiritual side, or both. So you can have a person that is both of those things also. But the common thread between a 7 who is a scientist and a 7 who is a spiritual leader and teacher, the common thread between these two is that they have the ability to go within, be introspective, and kind of tune out the rest of the world. Can also be a very inquisitive number. So if you give this number a simple reason and a simple explanation, that's not going to be enough for this number. This number wants to know the real reason why something is happening. It wants to know the truth behind it. This is a number that will ask questions and is very curious and is exploring the universe. They're exploring the world. So they are explorers, but they're explorers on the inside. They're going within their own minds, and they are thinking about things, and they are exploring the universe from within themselves. So this is an exploring number. So it has that in common with the 5. As I had mentioned with the 5 is the explorer of the outside world and the outside environment. The 7 is also an explorer as well, but they're an explorer of the internal world and what's going on within them and in their mind. But 5s need the external environment to provide this mental stimulation, and 7s can provide this mental stimulation on their own by going within their own mind. And so because of this, a lot of times they make really good writers also. Writing is something that is very therapeutic for people with the number 7, and they can be very, very good at it. Another thing with the number 7 is that this is a very mysterious number. So these people that have this number, they're very mysterious and they can be very elusive. And that's because 7s tend to be very private. And because it is a very private number, we don't always see all of the aspects of this number. People with this number are not always very open. They can be very private, not showing people everything that's going on in their lives. And this makes this number very mysterious, and it can be very elusive. And because of this, people can become very obsessed with people who have this number, because people that have this number have this mysterious, elusive quality to them. And people just can't figure them out exactly. So people can't figure them out, and they want to know more about them. And people can become really obsessed with number 7s. 5s and 7s can have this in common, where people become very obsessed with them and wanting to know more. But especially the number 7, because the 7 is so mysterious and so elusive. And we're not really seeing all of the sides of the 7. The 7 will only show you what they want you to see. But they're not going to show you everything, because there's a part of them that they want to keep private. And so a good example of this is Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was a life path number 7, and she was a very mysterious, elusive person that a lot of people became very obsessed with. Another positive aspect of this number is it's a very independent number. So this number can take care of itself. It knows how to take care of itself, can be very independent, not always needing other people. So on the positive end of this number, you have a number that is very unusual and is not a boring number. There's always going to be something going on in their mind. They're always thinking of something new, and they're always going to have something to talk about with other people when they do choose to let other people into their lives and to communicate with other people. They're always going to have something to talk about with other people because they have so much going on in their mind. People will always find them to be very unusual. And also on the positive end of this number, you have a person that is not materialistic. So 7s are not concerned with the material world. They are focused more on the spiritual world, and they are focused more on the intellectual world. And they're not as concerned with material things, and they're not as concerned with having money-making jobs or jobs that kind of impress other people. That's not important to them. So this is a very non-materialistic number, not concerned with the material aspects of life. So now we're going to talk about the negative side of the number 7. And I want to say beforehand that not all 7s have these negative qualities. This is only the negative end of this number. So most people tend to have a few on the positive side and a few on the negative side, but this is only the negative side of this number. So the first thing on the negative side of this number is that it tends to be very reserved. Because having a lot of space and a lot of time alone by itself in order to think about things is so important to them, and really if they don't have that space and that ability to be able to think about things and to contemplate things, then they will not be happy. This will not be a happy number. But because they need that time alone to do their deep thinking and to have introspection, they tend to be very reserved, and they also tend to be very private. So there are many aspects of the 7 that the 7 will not share with other people. The 7 will only share certain parts of itself with other people, and a lot of itself it tries to keep private, and so this comes off as being very reserved to other people. This can also come off as being very aloof and very distant to people. So people often feel like they don't really know the 7, or they feel like the 7 is very distant and very far away from them, and they really don't know the 7 as much as they would like to. So sometimes they can come off as being distant and aloof. On the negative side, they also can be isolated and they can be loners. So like I said, because they need that time alone to think about things and to have introspection, they do tend to isolate themselves a little bit more than the other numbers do. So on the far end of the negative side of this number, you have a number that is very isolated and has cut itself off from a lot of people and doesn't really have a lot of relationships with other people. And the thing is, the 7 doesn't really need to have a lot of relationships with other people. So it doesn't need to have as many relationships with other people as the other numbers do. That's not as important for the 7, because the 7 really is here to kind of understand themselves and to have that time alone. So relationships aren't going to be as important to the number 7 as they are to other numbers. So a lot of times, if they're on the more negative end of the number, they can isolate themselves a lot. Also, on the negative end of this number, you have a number that is very cynical and very skeptical. So if a 7 hasn't found its spiritual basis and something to believe in that's greater than itself, something greater than itself to believe in, whether that be God or something else, then a lot of times they will become cynical and they will become very cynical about life. very cynical about why we are here, that there's no point of us being here, that there's no purpose. Cynical about other people's motivations and sincerity. They can be very skeptical of other people's motivations and sincerity. And this can also lead to being very distrustful and very paranoid. So a lot of times with this number, you will either see somebody that is very spiritual and has faith in a higher power, or you will see a person who is very cynical about life. And often a lot of atheists have this number on the other end of this number. Also, a lot of the cynicism and skepticism can lead to a lot of distrust and paranoia. So 7s on the negative end can be very distrustful of other people and very distrustful of their motivations and their intentions. And the truth is, some 7s on the negative end are distrustful of themselves. So they don't completely trust themselves. And so that gets projected out onto other people. And so they can become very distrustful of other people and very paranoid in some situations where they think everybody is out to get them and everybody wants to hurt them and everybody wants to harm them, or everybody has bad intentions for them. Also, on the negative end of this number, you have somebody who is very obsessive with their thoughts especially. So like I said, 7s like to think about things. That's very important to them. Sometimes this can become so severe that they become obsessive with their thoughts, and bad thoughts keep occurring in their mind over and over and over again. And we can see this as rumination, where they're ruminating about things that have happened to them in the past, and they can't get over these things that have happened to them, and they keep thinking about it over and over again. And what ends up happening is, because they are thinking about those negative things that have happened to them in the past, they end up attracting more negativity into their lives and more negative experiences into their lives, because there's this thought pattern and the cycle that's going on within them. And it's like a vicious cycle that they can't get out of sometimes, because of these obsessive thoughts that some of them have. And because of this, a lot of times on the negative side of this number, you have a number that becomes very depressed and becomes very pessimistic. So if they can't stop thinking about certain things that have happened to them before in the past, or certain events, a lot of times this will attract more negativity into their lives. And these obsessive thoughts that they have in this rumination often will cause depression and pessimism, where they feel like the world is a negative place and negative things keep happening to them. But because they keep thinking about these thoughts over and over again, these negative events keep happening to them over and over again. So they keep pulling them into their world. They keep pulling them into their reality. And so they become even more pessimistic and they become even more depressed. And it's a vicious cycle. Also, on the negative end of this number, you have somebody who is very critical and is a constant complainer. So complaining about everything, criticizing people, criticizing everything, and just complaining about everything and complaining about life. If they're experiencing depression and going through a pessimistic state in their life, a lot of times they will start to focus on the negativity, and they will become constant complainers and critics of other people and everything that they see around them. Also, 7s have very sharp thinking, but they also have a very sharp tongue. And if they feel like somebody has done something to hurt them or said something to hurt them, then they will lash out at that person, and they can have a very lethal tongue that will say things to really hurt another person's feelings and really cut another person. And lastly, the last negative attribute of this number is that it can sometimes be odd and it can sometimes be very awkward. Like I said, 7s on the more negative side of the number can at times isolate themselves from other people, and if they do this too much, then they will isolate themselves to the point where they become awkward around other people, socially awkward, and other people will see them as being kind of odd, not really knowing how to fit in with other people, and other people will see them as being like they don't really fit in. And sometimes if it's on the very far end of this number, you have a person that comes off as being like they're autistic and seeming like they're on the autistic spectrum. And the last negative quality of this number is that sometimes this number is not always good at putting their dreams into action. So they will come up with these great dreams, and they're really good at thinking about things and visualizing things, but they're not always good at taking the action in order to make those dreams a reality. Moving on to number 8. So in numerology, all numbers are ruled by a part of our solar system, and number 8 is ruled by the planet Saturn. So I want you to imagine that each number is on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have all of the positive characteristics of that number, and then on the other far end of that spectrum, you have all of the negative qualities of that number. And most people tend to fall in the middle of this spectrum, having some of the qualities on the positive side and having a few of the qualities on the negative side. So let's talk about the positive qualities of the number 8 first. So 8 is the number that represents power, and it's also the number that represents strength and success and ambition. And it also represents wealth, abundance, and prosperity. So if you look at the 8, it looks like the infinity sign. And the infinity sign goes on and on and on and on. And that's representative of the energy of the number 8, where the energy just goes on and on and on. And we see this with number 8s. Number 8s are very similar to 4s, and 4 is a multiple of 8. But the difference between the 4 and the 8 is the 4 will become successful and it will become accomplished because it is determined and motivated, and it is willing to do the work and put in the effort and put in the labor to get there. But the 8 doesn't really have to do that. The 8 doesn't have to work as hard as the number 4 does in order to achieve great levels of success and in order to achieve great levels of power and prosperity. And that's because there's usually an understanding within the 8 on the positive side of the number at a subconscious level that they are infinitely connected to source energy, or they are infinitely connected to God. They are infinitely connected to a higher source, and they are limitless. So they have this understanding that there's this infinite connection to source energy and to infinite power. So if you look at the infinity sign, it is a limitless sign. It keeps going and going and going, and that's kind of the energy that the 8 represents. This energy of limitless power, where there is strength that keeps going and going and going, and they can kind of tap into this at a higher level. They can tap into this, and they can sense this at a subconscious level, even if they're not aware of it. And so it becomes very easy for them to obtain power and to obtain success and prosperity and abundance, because these things are just kind of attracted to them. It just kind of comes to them naturally, and they don't have to put in the work and they don't have to put in the effort the way the 4 does in order to achieve these things. And they're able to achieve these things on such a great level if they really are on the positive side of this number and really put their minds to it. They can achieve great levels of power and great levels of success. And if you look at the charts of a lot of billionaires, a lot of them have 8s in their chart. Somewhere in their chart you will see 8s. And so a lot of times people with this number will end up in positions of power. They will end up in positions where they are, able to become very successful. And these kind of positions or these kind of opportunities will just kind of be attracted to them naturally, and it will just kind of come to them naturally. So a lot of CEOs of companies tend to have this number. People that own big businesses, people that are very well off financially, people that are at the top of their fields in whatever field they're in, they usually will end up moving up the ladder very quickly. They usually will be given positions of power, and they usually will be pushed to the top very quickly compared to other people. This is a very business-minded number, kind of like the way the 4 is. But even if these people are not in business, they still will usually be very successful in whatever fields they are in and be able to move up the ladder in the field they are in very quickly. And that's because these kinds of positions and this kind of success is just naturally attracted to them. It just comes to them naturally. It's almost as if they are thrown into these kinds of positions, and they don't really have to do anything. They don't have to put in the work most of the time, and it just comes to them. So because of that, 8 is also the number of wealth and prosperity. These people usually are very financially secure or financially well off if they are on the positive side of the number 8. Also, this is a very responsible number. It's a very secure number. Security is very important to people with this number. They like to have their environments very secure. They need to have a secure job. They need to have a secure environment. This is also a very responsible number. So, as they always say, with great power comes great responsibility. So because these people are often given positions of power in life, they also have great responsibility that comes with that. And they usually are very responsible people if they are on the positive side of this number. This is also the number of great generosity. So these people on the positive side of this number will make lots of money and they will be very successful and they'll have a lot of prosperity, but they will also be very generous with this wealth and this prosperity. And a lot of times they will give this back to other people. And there's kind of this inner knowing within these people that you get in life whatever you give, and that you get usually 3 times whatever you give. So for that reason, people on the positive side of this number are very generous. They make a lot of money, but they also give back a lot as well. This number is also very organized and very detailed, very similar to the number 4. They're very meticulous. They focus on the details. So when they're in a business negotiation or they're having a business deal, they will look at the fine print, they will look at the details. All of that stuff really matters to them. If you go into the closet of an 8, you will notice that the closet is usually very well organized and sometimes even color-coded. Their homes are usually very well organized. Their lives, their jobs, everything is very well organized. And this organization that they have, this effective organization, effective ability to be able to plan things out, that's one of the reasons why they are usually so successful. This is also a very extroverted number, so these people tend to be very talkative. And whatever is going on the inside of them, they will usually share that out with the rest of the world because they are very extroverted and very focused on the external world and the external environment that they live in. This is also a very courageous and a very brave number on the positive side. So this number is willing to take risks. Unlike any other number, this number is willing to take huge risks and risk everything if they have to. And usually that pays off very well for them. So they are willing to risk everything a lot of times. And usually they have a very good business intuition. So when it comes to making business deals and taking these risks, they have very good intuition because they are tapped into source energy on a subconscious level, even if they don't realize this. So that intuition that they're given usually is spot on. And when they do take calculated risks, it pays off big for them. And that's another reason why they end up becoming so successful. So they are willing to take huge risks, and this can be a very brave and a very courageous number. And they have very good business intuition, very good intuition when it comes to business deals. And lastly, this is a very accomplished number. So as I had mentioned before, this number is very accomplished and it exudes accomplishment on all levels. So when you see an 8, you can tell that they're an 8. They look accomplished. They look powerful. They look successful. They look ambitious. And the way the outside world sees them is also very important to them. So it's very important for them to keep that image up for people because they want the world to perceive them as that way. So they look the part. They are the part if they're on the positive side of this number, and they look the part as well. And people can see that with them. And people often have a lot of respect for 8s and look up to them. And a lot of times they will want to copy them and they will want to be like them. That's very common also. Okay, so now let's talk about the negative side of this number. And I want to say beforehand that not all 8s have these negative qualities. I'm not saying that all 8s have these qualities. This is just the negative end of this number. Most people will have a few qualities on the positive side, and they will have a few qualities on the negative side also. So the first negative quality of the number 8 is materialism. And Like I said before, these people are very obsessed with success and ambition, and that's very important to them. They're not happy unless they have achieved a certain level of success. And so sometimes the focus for them can be on the material world a little bit too much. They're too focused on making money. They're too focused on being successful and what that looks like, and too focused on, the material aspects of life. And to the point where they'll do anything to get that. Materialism and being materialistic is one of the negative sides. Also, being very greedy. So on the positive end of the number 8, you have the 8 that is very generous and understands that in order to keep the flow going and to continue to receive from the universe, they have to give back to the universe. On the negative end of the number 8, you have the person that doesn't get this and doesn't want to give back at all, doesn't want to give anything that they have achieved. And they can become very greedy and hoard money and not share it, not donate, make donations, not share it with other people, not make donations to charities, just keeping it all to themselves and becoming obsessed with money. Like for them, the focus of their life is on money. How much money have they made? How many stocks do they have? How many assets do they have? How much property do they own? So they can become very obsessed with this sometimes, and they can become very greedy. They can also be very superficial. So like I said, only focused on the material aspects of life and consumed with materialism. They can also be very stingy. So, like I said, the opposite of the generous 8 is the stingy 8 who hoards everything, doesn't want to share any of it. Saves everything that they earn, and they have tons of money that they've acquired over the years that's just stored away in the banks, and it's just sitting there. You also can have a person that is very wasteful as well. So an 8 that loves to spend money on everything. So they usually are very generous with their money, but sometimes they can be very wasteful and wasted on things that are very unnecessary, things that they really don't need. But because they enjoy spending money and they love giving it out, they can become very wasteful sometimes and wasting it on things that they don't really need. Also, on the negative side of this number, you have a person that is very tense and very serious. They can take things very seriously. They tend to be like the 4 in that regard, where they take things very seriously and they take life very seriously, and they can take relationships very seriously as well. And taking things seriously is one of the reasons why they are able to become so successful and move up the ladder, because, sometimes they do take things more seriously than some of the other numbers. Sometimes this can make them become very rigid and very inflexible. Sometimes you can have a person also that is narrow-minded. Usually with the 8s, this is not that big of an issue, because 8s, unlike the 4, they are able to think outside of the box a little bit more than the 4 is. So they can think a little bit more abstractly. But in some situations, you have an 8 that cannot do that and is very narrow-minded and only sees the path that they have carved out and the things that they believe in and their opinions, and aren't willing to look at the other side and look at other people's thoughts and opinions, or not willing to listen to that. So sometimes you can see that with the 8. But in general, they are able to think outside of the box a little bit more than the 4 is. Also, another negative quality of this number is perfectionism. So this makes sense, because these people, image is very important to them. The way they look, the way their family looks, the way their home looks, the way their job looks. This is all very important to them because they really care about what other people think about them. They are very focused on the external world and the outside world. And so image is very important to them, and they want to do things perfect. They want things to be done perfectly. And they want to have a perfect job. They want to have a perfect home. And they want to have the perfect life. And often they want to have the perfect spouse. And looks can be very important to them sometimes, where they want to have the perfect spouse who looks perfect and has the perfect personality and has the perfect career and has the perfect education. Like, all of these things really, really matter to them. So they can be hardcore perfectionist in this area, not really willing to settle on something if it doesn't meet their high standards. And sometimes this can be good. This perfectionism is what helps them to do things perfectly. But sometimes it can be bad too, because it can hurt their life. They become too focused on obtaining this level of perfection. And the thing is, nothing in life is really perfect. You know, people are not perfect. Jobs are not perfect. Situations in life are not always perfect, but they want everything to be perfect. And, you know, especially when it comes to outside appearances. So they want their spouse to look perfect and they want their spouse to be perfect. And sometimes when they don't live up to this level of perfection, then, you know, it can lead to endings that are unnecessary. And it can lead to, you know, the 8 not having certain things or certain people in their life because they're not perfect. So it can hurt them sometimes, this perfectionism also. Also, the 8 can be very argumentative as well. And, you know, that's similar to the 4 where they like to argue. But they see this as a good thing. They love a good debate. You know, they tend to be very opinionated. They tend to be very extroverted. So, you know, they enjoy that. They enjoy getting into arguments sometimes. Not all the times, but, you know, if they're on the negative side of this number, sometimes argumentativeness is something you will see with them. And they like this. They think it's a good thing. But to other people, this is not always a good thing. Also, they can be very blunt, too, in their communication, which is similar to the 4. So sometimes when they communicate, they can say things that are very honest, maybe a little too honest, and they can be a little brutally honest, which can hurt people that are more sensitive. Because they're so honest and they're so trustworthy, you see this in their communication. Their communication is very honest, and sometimes it can be very blunt. And this can really hurt some of the more sensitive numbers that don't do well with this kind of blunt, brutal honesty. Also, on the negative side of this number, you have a person that is very authoritative and can be very ruthless. So, as I had mentioned before, because the focus for them is materialism and the material world that we live in, sometimes this number on the negative side will do whatever it takes in order to achieve that. If they're not achieving that and they know they should be, they can become ruthless with other people and doing things that are unethical sometimes in order to get that success and to get that power that they want. And they can be ruthless with this power sometimes when they finally get it. And they can be very authoritarian with it. And, you know, the power goes to their head sometimes and they're, you know, doing negative things with the power. And they're not being responsible with it. So sometimes we can see that on the negative side of the 8. And then also sometimes you will see a person that is completely the opposite of the typical 8 that we're used to seeing. So we're used to seeing the 8 that is successful and is, you know, it's easy for them to acquire wealth and prosperity, and these things just come to them naturally. And then you have the 8 that is completely the opposite and hasn't been able to achieve those things, that power, that success, that prosperity, when inside of them they know that they should, you know? So this becomes a conflict for them. And so sometimes if this has happened, you will get an 8 that looks down on anybody who has success or looks down on anybody who has made money and kind of acts like, oh, you know, those people are materialistic, and kind of looks down on them and sees them as being materialistic and consumed with money, and they don't want to be like that. And, you know, they're completely the opposite of the 8 because they haven't been able to achieve that yet. So they look down on people that have. So sometimes on a rare occasion, you will see an 8 like that as well, if they're on the negative side. Moving on to number 9. So all numbers in numerology are ruled by a part of our solar system, and number 9 is ruled by the planet Mars. So I want you to imagine that each number is on a spectrum, and on one side of the spectrum you have all of the positive qualities of that number, and on the other end of the spectrum you have all of the negative qualities of that number. Most people tend to fall in the middle of this spectrum if they have this number, with having some of the qualities on the positive side and some of the qualities on the negative side. So let's talk about the positive qualities of the number 9 first. So on the positive side of this number, you have a person who is a humanitarian and who is very caring towards other people. So 9 is a very similar number to number 6 and number 3. So in number 3, we see that they are trying to serve other people through their acts of creation. In number 6, we see that they are trying to serve other people through their service to people and through being helpful to other people. In 9, we see also that this number is trying to serve other people through its acts of helpfulness to other people. With the 6, it's usually towards service to the community or service towards people in the family, people in the immediate environment. But 9 gives service to humanity, all of humanity as a whole. So this is the number of serving the greater good. So the 6 will provide service to other people on a more micro level. Usually like they tend to be nurses or they tend to be teachers, some sort of service type of career. And 9s usually will become humanitarians, where they're involved in philanthropy and charity and trying to help all of humanity as a whole. So the 6 is at a micro level and the 9 provides service at the macro level. So that's the main difference between the 6 and the 9, but they are very similar. 3, 6, and 9, all of these numbers are very similar to each other, and as you can see, 6 and 9 are both multiples of 3. So in numerology, all numbers are broken down to a single digit except for the master numbers. There's special different numbers, but all of the numbers are broken down to a single digit other than the master numbers. And so 9 is the very last of those. It's the very last number in numerology. And so one of the reasons they are also humanitarians and they tend to care deeply about humanity as a whole is because this is the last stage of our evolution. So at the first stage, you have number 1 that is more focused on the self and the individual. And when you get to the very last number, you have a number that is focused on everybody and cares about everybody as a whole. So that's another reason why 9 is the number of humanitarianism, and it's the number of helping all of humankind. And these people tend to be humanitarians, and they tend to be very caring, and they tend to be very tolerant with other people. And on the positive side of this number, they are very wise. So this is a very evolved number, and a lot of these people with this number tend to be old souls. So like they've been here before, this is not their first lifetime. They've been here before, and so they have a lot of wisdom within them. They're very wise, very similar to the 7. 7's also very wise. The 9 is a very wise number globally. Its wisdom is on a global scale. So also similar to the 3 and the 6, 9 tends to be very empathetic and very loving. So it can sense other people's emotions a lot of times, and it has a lot of empathy for other people, which is one of the reasons why it is so concerned with humanity as a whole, because 9s tend to be very empathetic. They can feel other people's pain a lot of times. They have a lot of sympathy for other people and a lot of empathy for other people, because a lot of times they can feel this with other people. And a lot of times 9s will be empaths, and an empath is a person that is able to feel another person's emotions. This is a very sensitive number. They're very sentimental. They're very sentimental in the regard that they really care about the past. They really care about past events, and the past is very important to the number 9. And so on the positive end of the number 9, you have a 9 that cares about the past, isn't obsessed with the past, but cares about the past and is very sentimental about the past. So if you look at 9, the way it's positioned, it's kind of looking back on all of the other numbers. So it's the very last number and it's looking back on all of the other numbers. So we see this with the number 9. This is a 9 that loves to look back on the past and loves to look back on things that have happened to them in the past. And people from their past and experiences from their past, often they will have a lot of sentiment towards anybody or any situation that is from their past. As I had mentioned before, this number is also very emotional, very good at picking up on other people's emotions and being able to read other people's emotions. So that's another great quality that they have. This number is also very creative. So like the 3 and the 6, this is a very creative number. The 3 likes to create projects and likes to express itself creatively. The 6 is also very creative. It likes to create families and homes and communities. The 9 is also a very creative number. It likes to create things on a global scale. So whereas the 6 is creating things at the micro level, the 9 is creating things at the macro level. It likes to create things that will affect humanity and affect entire populations of people and have a positive, profound effect on entire populations of people. So they want to create things for humanity, and a lot of times they will do this through their humanitarian work. For this reason, a lot of times you will see singers and songwriters and musicians that are number 9s. It's very common to see people that are musically talented with a 3, a 6, or a 9 in their chart somewhere, because these are all the very creative numbers. And especially with the number 9 and the number 3, and with the number 9, this makes sense because when they create music, it's on a global scale, and that's their way of contributing to humanity. So this is a very creative number and very musically inclined a lot of times. This number can also be very eccentric. So eccentric in the regard that they're not like other people. You know, they have their own way of being, they have their own way of dressing, and they have their own way of acting. And they're not, they're not going to be like everybody else. They want to be different. These are very creative people. So sometimes this will come off to people as that they are eccentric. And these people are not boring. So they will never bore you. They're always very interesting people with this number. This number can also be very open-minded. So this is a very evolved number. Like I said, it's the last number in numerology. And often, a lot of times, people that come down here with this number, this is their last lifetime. So this is their last time being on this planet and their last time incarnating into this world and onto this planet. And so this is their last lifetime a lot of times, people with this number. And so these people are old souls. They've been alive many times. They've had many, many lifetimes, and they have a lot of knowledge and wisdom. And they usually are very open-minded because of that, because they can see the greater picture and they have a very unique ability to think outside of the box. And a lot of times this number can see the world for what it really is, and it can see behind the illusion and behind the veil. So sometimes you'll even have 9s that are psychic and have psychic abilities because they have this ability to see reality for what it really is, because these are old souls. People with this number, usually this is not their first lifetime. They've usually been down here many times before. Also, this is a very charismatic number and a very playful number. So that's another great quality of this number that I tend to see, is that they are very playful. They love to play with people, and they can be very charming and very charismatic. And people a lot of times are drawn to them. They're never boring people. Sometimes they can be eccentric and, very unique, and also charming too, and charismatic at the same time. And that combination for some people is deadly, Some people they're very drawn to them because of this. Those are all really great qualities that the number 9 has on the positive side. So now let's talk about the negative side of this number. And I want to say beforehand that not all 9s have these negative qualities and characteristics. This is just the negative end of this number. And most people have a few of the positive qualities, and most people have a few of the negative qualities too. So the first negative quality about this number on the negative side of the number is that it can become very wounded and hurt very easily. So these people tend to be very emotional, and they can pick up on other people's emotions. They tend to get wounded and hurt very easily because they're very sensitive. So their feelings can get hurt very easily, and they can be oversensitive at times. So often there's not a good boundary between their energy field and another person's energy field. And because there's not a good boundary between the two fields, they are able to pick up on other people's emotions and feelings, and they can sense other people's energy because their energy fields are kind of like mixed in with theirs. And so this helps them to be very sensitive towards other people, and they can sense other people's emotions and feelings. But also because of this, because there's not a good boundary between the two energy fields, sometimes they can be hurt very easily, and they can be oversensitive, where they're picking up too much on other people's emotions and feelings, and almost as if they're feeling like those emotions and feelings belong to them, and they can't sense a difference between the two. And sometimes this can lead to oversensitivity within them, and they can hurt very easily. Sometimes this can also make them very moody also. On the negative end of this number, you also have a person that is very emotionally scarred. So as I had mentioned before, 9, if you look at the way it's positioned, it's looking back on all of the other numbers. It looks like it's looking back on them. And 9 is also the last number in numerology. So it tends to be a number that is very focused on the past and very focused with things that have happened to it in the past. And it can become obsessed with the past sometimes, not being able to get over events that have happened to them in the past, not being able to get over people from their past. So on the positive side of this number, you have a person that is very sentimental about the past. But if it goes to the negative side, sometimes that sentimentalness can become obsession, where they become obsessed and they can't focus on the present moment. They can't focus on people and situations in their present because they're so focused on the past and what happened in the past and who they dated in the past. And a lot of times this is because they are emotionally scarred from things that have happened to them. They haven't quite gotten over things that have happened to them throughout their life. Because I had mentioned they're very sensitive. So throughout their life, that sensitivity was a good thing. It really helped them to empathize with other people. But at the same time, it also probably hurt them too and scarred them in many ways. And so little by little, as the years go on, sometimes the 9 will become emotionally scarred from so many things that have happened to them throughout their life that they're still obsessed with and still thinking about and still can't get over. And still haven't completely healed from these things that have happened to them throughout their life. And so on the negative side of this number, you have a person that is very emotionally scarred and wounded and hurt from things that have happened to them in the past. So sometimes on the negative end of this number, you have a person that bottles up their emotions, and then, when they finally do release those emotions, it's a volcano. So they've been bottling up their emotions this whole time, and they haven't been really expressing those emotions, and then suddenly it just all comes out like a volcano. And everybody's just like, whoa, what is going on? I had no idea you felt like that. So that tends to be something that they do as well, where they will bury their feelings because they don't want to deal with it, because this is a number that has a lot of feelings. It has a lot of emotion. It has to, in order for it to serve humanity and in order for it to care enough about humanity to want to help them. It has to be like that. It has to be a very sensitive number. So sometimes they don't deal well with all of these emotions. They have all of these emotions. They're picking up on other people's emotions. They have emotions themselves, and they don't want to deal with it, and they will stuff it down inside of them, and they will not deal with it, and those emotions become bottled up within them, and then one day it just explodes. Also, sometimes these people have a fear of abandonment. So something has happened to them in the past, and they were rejected by somebody, and they were abandoned by somebody, and now that is the fear of their life. They are constantly obsessed with, is this person going to reject me? Is this person going to abandon me? So that becomes the focus for them. And because they're so obsessed with this and they're thinking about it all the time, this constant feeling of this person might reject me, this person might abandon me, what ends up happening is because they're thinking about that all the time and that's their greatest fear, usually that will end up happening to them because they are attracting that to them. They are attracting it to them because they're thinking about it all the time. And so for them, sometimes this can be a cycle, and it can be hard for them to break out of this. So sometimes they can also feel like victims if they are on the negative side of this number. So as I had mentioned before, they often become obsessed with the past and things that have happened to them in the past. And in their mind, it's because somebody has done something to them in the past, or multiple people have done horrible things to them in the past. And that's one of the reasons they are obsessed with the past and they can't get over it. And this emotional scarring that they have from past events and past people often will lead to victimization and feeling like they are victims, and they just can't get out of this mode of feeling like people have victimized them. So because this is the last number in numerology, it is the ending number, the final number. This number often will want to bring things in their life to an end. So they will end things very easily. So this could be jobs, it can be relationships with other people. If things start going wrong, or if, things start happening, instead of sticking it out and seeing it through, a lot of times, if these people are on the negative side of this number, they will just end it. Instead of just seeing it through and seeing what could have happened, they'll just end it. They want to end things. And it's because they have this need inside of them to want to end things. Ending things is a good thing for them. It makes them feel good. So sometimes even if the job is going well or the relationship is going well, they will still want to end it because they'll have this inner voice inside of them telling them, you need to end this. You need to bring this to an end. So on the negative side of this number, you will see that quite often with this number. And sometimes their fear of rejection and abandonment can also be the reason for this. And the last thing on the negative side of this number is that because this number sometimes has a lot of emotional scarring and a lot of emotional wounding and hurt from the past, sometimes this number can be very unstable. And this can lead to emotional disorders, and it can also lead to mood disorders. So all of this can make this number very unstable sometimes and cause mood and emotional disorders. So if you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments below what you think about all of this. I want to know what your opinion is. What do you think about everything that I just said? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to check out my services, I will leave the information to that below. I would love to have you subscribe and follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video today. I am sending you light and love. Take care.